How's it going, guys? Welcome back to the channel. Today we are looking at a little bit of weirdness from Epiphone from the early 2000s. So brace yourselves, because there's some stuff going on. In the early 2000s, manufacturers were starting to think outside the box, and one of the things that they did was sort of change up the old traditional ways of thinking. And a lot of it leaked out into the more sort of budget market, because the people who were starting to pick up guitars were sort of teenagers who couldn't afford much, and that was all thanks to things like nu metal and the revival of goth, and things just really started picking up in the music industry, and it was the good old days before the internet absolutely killed it. And one of the manufacturers who got onto this hype train were Epiphone. In 2001 to 2002 they started making what they called the E-series, which was a little bit of a departure from what they'd previously done, because it wasn't focusing so much on, just the standard Les Paul or the Les Paul Junior or the Les Paul Special or the SG. It was more about what they could do to break the mold, because teenagers don't really care about tradition, and everybody was looking forward to the future that was all shiny and bright in this brand new millennium. This isn't to say that things weren't getting shaken up in the 90s, but the change of the millennium really altered people's perspectives on what they wanted, and Epiphone grabbed this with both hands. In 2001 to 2002, Epiphone created what they called the E-series. This was signified by flying the flag of the new logo and the new headstocks. In the standard E-series you had the Basher, the Bully, the Pierced SG and the Extreme G400, which wasn't as much of a catchy title. Now the Pierced SG and the Extreme G400 were probably the most prevalent ones that I've seen in the second-hand market since those days that they were released. It's rarer to find any of the others. So in the other sub-series, you've got the Hard Body, which had a Demon V, a Beast, a Slasher and an Evolution. And out of those models, the Evolution was the only one that wasn't available with an onboard effects unit that had distortion and chorus. But all four of those models were available in a standard version. The third series, the Polyester series, contained the Poly V, the Poly X and the Poly Mod. Then we get onto the Nuclear collection, and the only model that they actually did was a standard Les Paul. This was available in 5 different crackle finishes, such as black white, purple sparkle and white, blue sparkle and white, green yellow and red yellow. And over here in the UK market we also had black and white pearloid finishes, which I've seen in the flesh, and they are a choice, and I'm not sure they really align with what Epiphone was going for with the rest of the series. However, the Nuclear Extreme, which is what they called the Les Paul shape, is my favourite of the series because I've got one. Of course I do. Now, unlike my last video, which was the RGX-A2, this is a weighty bastard. It's effectively your standard Les Paul weight, although it feels slightly heavier in my hand, especially when I'm trying to hold it up this high. So let's do specs. You've got a mahogany body with the chunky maple cap, a slim set maple neck, the E-series dovewing headstock, 43mm nut, standard Gibson 24 3/4 scale length, 2 extra hot E-series humbuckers, standard Les Paul controls, rosewood fretboard with Art Deco pearloid inlays, and a clear scratch plate. I'm going to point out at this point that I never chose this guitar. It was actually my dad's. He'd always wanted a Les Paul, so we went to get one. The shop where we were looking didn't have many options, and they were all pretty boring. We saw this when we first walked in, and we were disgusted by it. But the thing about disgust is it quickly turns to intrigue. And the more time that we spent in the shop, the more we found ourselves looking at this one. In the end, he decided to buy it because it was a bit different, and it was a bit of a joke. And as with all my dad's guitars, I've inherited them, so lucky me, I guess. And I'm just now realising where my lack of good taste comes from. Jokes aside, it is actually a really nice guitar to play. The neck profile's really comfortable. The weight is heavy, but it's well balanced. This guitar's not in the best shape, it's seen better days. It's got a few nicks and chips, it's got a few scuffs. One of the things that really does bug me is the fact that it's got so much corrosion on the chrome hardware. It's almost like it was kept in a cold garage before my dad bought it. It'd be easy enough to replace the parts and make it nice again, but it's hard to do when there's so much sentimental value in a guitar, which seems ridiculous, but as musicians, sentimentality is one of the few things that we can agree on. In sunlight, the back of this body actually looks like a ruby red, which is surprising because the finish is actually really dark. The shape of the headstock splits opinions, but I kinda like it. It's almost like a drunk version of the current Epiphone headstocks. And I really do love the stylized logo. It reminds me of the old motorbike badges from the 70s. The same logo is also etched onto the pickups, which is a nice touch. It helps show that these pickups were designed to be different. It's got the standard tunematic bridge that you find on Les Pauls, and yeah, it does the job. It's just what it is. Standard bridge. As you can see from the logo on the back of the headstock, it was a limited edition. I'm not actually sure how many they made of these, but I know they're fairly rare. I've seen a few in my time, but not many. The Epiphone tuners are holding up fairly well, and I think the nut's plastic, but it does a fine job. Now, these were built in the Unsung factory in Korea, and the quality holds up. This is now a quarter of a century old, and it still plays absolutely fine. Obviously the hardware's a bit corroded, but aside from that, it's doing well. But something that looks this weird must sound pretty cool. So let's have a listen. As you can hear, the pickups do sound pretty hot. This obviously goes to prove that Epiphone were going for the new metal market. And they probably would have cornered it if they'd done a 7-string version of some of the models as well. But they did what they set out to do, which was to put interesting instruments into the hands of bored teenagers. It's just a shame that that wasn't enough to save the music industry from the internet. So what do you think? Is this something you'd play? Is it a bit too weird looking? Is it not traditional enough? I've always had a little bit of an interest in some of the other models, but never enough to actually purchase one when I found one. Now, I think my dad paid about £200 for this in 2013, and the market actually has increased since. You're looking around the average of about £400, sometimes higher depending on where you get it from. But to be honest, I would say try and keep it below the £300 mark if you're going to buy one, because they are showing their age a little bit. Now, my album of the week before I go is Cruel Melody by Blacklight Burns. Blacklight Burns is the band that Wes Borland formed when Limp Bizkit downed Tools for years. The album's got an eclectic mix and it's all good stuff. So give it a listen. What have you got to lose? So as usual, thanks for watching. I'll see you all next time.